Good morning, Bucknutters. It is Thursday, November 19th, 2020. I am Dan Rubin. This is the Bucknuts Morning 5 and change. If it's Thursday, that can mean only one thing. 24/7 Sports Director of Recruiting Steve Wiltfong checks in from the state of Indiana. Steve, how goes it?
Good morning, Daniel. It goes well. My car says it's 54 degrees. The sun is shining. I feel good on this Thursday, a week away from Thanksgiving. I'm cooking my first ever turkey, so I'll take suggestions on the thread on the front row if y'all have any. We are playing our first ever home game for Thanksgiving. I've cooked a lot of stuff, but I've actually never cooked a turkey before. So your best suggestions, your secret to having a delicious turkey on Thursday, as the Wiltfongs are hosting a couple people at our house instead of hitting the road and playing an away game this year.
Socially distanced, I'm sure. Will you be deep frying or going classic with the turkey?
I literally have no idea what my strategy is yet, other than the first thing I did as far as my research is finding out that you don't want to buy your turkey too early. 2 days before is as early as you should go. So I know when to buy the turkey. I just don't know how I'm executing it yet.
I'd be careful about that, dude. Turkeys sell out pretty quickly. You might want to check the
So
inventory.
I'm anticipating stores knowing that you should come within 48 hours. I think I even saw that on Google also.
Definitely want to rely on the public during a pandemic for something like that. It's probably a good plan. Anyway, let's talk about the Buckeyes. The network came out with a top 247 update, as they're wont to do every month. One of the last ones for 2021. There were some Ohio State guys that fluctuated. Some guys stayed at the top. Can you summarize for the Bucknutters, please?
Well, I just think the big takeaway is Mike Hall moving up some more. He's kind of what we're looking for in a defensive tackle from just a disruptive standpoint and the way he plays the game, and the quickness, and brings that pass rush presence from the interior. But he's a factor in so many different ways. He's also, as we've said numerous times, young for his age. Just think there's still a lot in the tank for Mike Hall, and we envision him being one of the dominant players on the defensive line in college football when his time is up.
Very much looking forward to having Mike Hall in the middle and also Jack Sawyer on the edge. Those guys are a much-needed influx of elite talent. We must address the gentleman who stayed close to the top, JT Tuimoloau. It appears no one will ever get to officially visit campus again in any sport ever. Do you think that affects JT? Please also address Emeka Egbuka. How have the latest decisions by the NCAA to basically curtail in-person recruiting ad infinitum, how will that affect the process? Do you still think they're both going to run it out? Any changes?
Well, I think the no-visit deal is a good thing for Ohio State. I mean, in the sense, you obviously, if you're Ohio State, you wish you can get guys on campus like everybody else. But all things even, recruiting in a pandemic, it's not even. Ohio State's going to outwork the majority of the people that they're recruiting against for prospects and foster more genuine relationships and put in that extra time to do so. And so, although you'd love to get him to the shoe for a game, and that certainly also is an advantage for you compared to other college football atmospheres, this can also be viewed as a positive for Ohio State as well. For Emeka Egbuka, he's been to Ohio State twice. He has a point of reference there. And he talks to Brian Hartline as much as anybody. You saw Brandon Huffman's story, talking to Ryan Day once a week. He's talking to C.J. Stroud. He's talking to G. Scott. I mean, these are all things Huffman reported. He feels a connection in the locker room with the people that they have. The players are like-minded to Emeka. Obviously, he has great trust in Hartline and Ryan Day. He just wants to still try and get to Oklahoma on his own and see it. And for a lot of reasons why you like Ohio State, you would like Oklahoma, because I think that a lot of the people that work in the Oklahoma building are of similar characteristics to the Ohio State building. But I just, everything I'm hearing, Ohio State's still the one to beat for Emeka. They just got to bring it home. And for JT, he obviously has not visited Ohio State, but we still feel like the Buckeyes are the leader. And that's purely based on, Ohio State's track record to develop at the position, and have high draft picks, not just draft picks, but extremely high draft picks. Maybe JT will be able to get out and take some visits on his own. Obviously wouldn't be able to visit with Ryan Day in person, but he's going to have plenty of Zooms and meetings with those guys. He's going to play basketball, and then that's going to bleed into his football season, not the other way around, because they moved football in Washington State. So I don't know if he's going to even be able to get out and take visits, or where he'll find the time to do that. He's taking his process to February. Oregon, Alabama are a couple of the other contenders, and they certainly have a lot that they could offer him as well.
Yeah, the idea of adding Sawyer, Hall, and Tuamoloau to the same class, when you could make a real strong argument they all project as first-round NFL defensive line talents, would be spectacular. A few weeks ago, there was a crystal ball rush towards Columbus like we've never seen before. Many, many big-time names. One of them, Domani Jackson, number 3 overall player in the country, defensive back out of Mater Dei in California. Now, those with internet access see that Domani was at the Big House over the weekend, or at least was at Michigan, wearing Michigan gear. There are some who now think he's a Michigan guy. Your thoughts?
Yeah, so when I made my Ohio State pick for Domani, that was a pulse pick. Ohio State was definitely the program to beat based on the intel when I made that prediction. But I was on USC, and I didn't like that pick as much as Ohio State. So that's, why I flipped. Michigan was considered the number 2 team at that point going into, the visit that he had in Ann Arbor with a bunch of Michigan commits over the weekend. Domani has, family that's Michigan fans. He had he really fits in with those guys at Michigan. And for Domani, who's making his college decision, Michigan has a lot of things to offer a young man off the football field, as well as on it, with their big alumni association and the prestige Michigan brings. And look, I mean, those are reasons why he likes Ohio State too, with their Real Life Wednesday program, and fits in with a lot of the guys that are strongly considering Ohio State as well. I think that Michigan made a major move over the weekend. They were already near the top of the list. I know people are like, how could he possibly want to play for Michigan with them being 1-3 and we're 5-0 against Harbaugh? When these young men make college decisions, it's, a lot of things go into it. And I think that they see a lot of opportunity to be successful at Ohio State and a lot of opportunity to be successful at Michigan. I think there's momentum with Michigan coming out of that trip. I want to see where the dust settles a couple weeks after that trip before doing anything, because he still really likes Ohio State. Also, there's other programs that he's high on, but Domani is a well-rounded kid that's looking for a well-rounded college, and so Michigan and Ohio State are 2 programs that fit that bill, and we'll see where it goes.
I totally get that the guy wants to look around, but the number 3 player in the country is likely looking for a spot to project him to the NFL, and there is just no question where the place to be is to play defensive back right now. We're going to take a quick break, come back and talk about a football state, Indiana. We are back. In true 2020 fashion, Michigan basketball is number 1. Their football team is in the cellar. Penn State football is in the cellar. And Indiana football is leading the Big Ten East, so things are screwy. You are a resident of Indianapolis suburbs. What is it like to be an Indiana football fan right now?
Yeah, I'm actually a South Bend native, Indianapolis resident. The Hoosiers are obviously exciting right now when you talk about a program that last year had their best season since 1993, winning 8 games, and they're building off of that this year. Tom Allen never wavered in his belief of what he was building through 2 5-7 seasons, where at the end you lose to your rival Purdue to eliminate you from a postseason game. They stayed the course. Tom Allen was thought of one of the best defensive coordinators in the country when he was working under Kevin Wilson. And Indiana actually received some scrutiny from the media when they let Coach Wilson go and then didn't have any kind of search. They just passed the baton to Tom Allen, and then, out the gate, a couple 5 and 7s where, they were in some games against Michigan, and I think they played Ohio State tough. They didn't get it done. And, but that program came together in year 3. Look, they had arguably the best strength and conditioning program in the country. I know there's some other, obviously Ohio State's up there, Notre Dame, certainly, but they were in the conversation with Baloo and Dr. Ree, and Alabama went and hired those guys away from Indiana to let you know what the industry thought. But where I'm going with that is Indiana was a tough physical football team, and you guys know that starts with the strength and conditioning program, and that's a big part of your culture, and it was a big part of Indiana's culture under Tom Allen. It just takes longer to come together when you're a developmental program, and so in year 3 and now in year 4 of a developmental program with good strength and conditioning and good coaching, Indiana has really elevated its team. They've recruited well, particularly at quarterback. You're talking about a kid, Peyton Ramsey, who the last couple of years was among the Big Ten's lead in yards passing and touchdowns. But they bring in this Michael Penix kid who beat him out a couple times, just couldn't stay healthy. But in high school, threw like 62 touchdowns and only 5 interceptions over his last 2 seasons. And in Tampa Bay, he was always a productive football player that made good decisions with it, that could also make things happen by extending plays. And he's been a really good football player under center for the Hoosiers this year. They're a hard-nosed, tough, physical, playmaking defense. They have wideouts with speed. They have a tight end that looks like a future pro. And so this is a football team that's legit. And obviously they're not going to be scared of Ohio State this weekend. And it's a big game. It's a good game for Ohio State. They get a top 10 opponent that they certainly didn't think was going to be one going into the season. But Indiana, they've been impressive in their ball games this year. They're not limping in as a top 10 team. They've had some terrific performances.
From a talent perspective, when picking games, I like to look at who you played the week before. Sometimes that can affect the pick. They shut out Michigan State 24-0, and my guess is they probably had an advantage at 80% of the matchups. Now they're going to play against Ohio State, where they're going to be outmanned at least 80% of the matchups. How much of a chance do you give Indiana this weekend at the Shoe?
Well, you guys know that I never really picked the upset or the underdog. It's just not. I mean, I think that, Ohio State's obviously clearly the more talented team, and it starts at quarterback and Justin Fields. But Indiana's quarterback, Michael Penix, is completing 60% of his passes as well. And he distributes the ball. There's 4 guys on their team that have over 10 receptions. So there's a lot of guys that Ohio State has to account for pre-snap. I think that, even though you may like Ohio State's running backs better than Stevie Scott has shown over the course of his career that he can run roughshod over good defenses. And they're starting to mix in Samson James. I think that's I think Indiana would like to run the ball better than they have this year. They're not even averaging 3 yards per carry, but they've been able to make up for it with good defense and being playmakers on that side of the ball. And then Penix being a good decision maker and having, 4 weapons that you really have to account for on defense. And then, defensively, again, they get behind the line of scrimmage and they make plays in the backfield. They pick the ball off, they turn you over, and so they don't have as many draft picks as Ohio State, but they have guys that are capable of making plays against you and giving you a lot to account for on both sides of the ball.
I'm trying to think. I guess you could make the argument this is the biggest, at least, opportunity in Indiana football history. They haven't beaten Ohio State since 1988. The spread is 21 points. What's your pick?
Well, I pick Ohio State to win the game. I don't know if they'll cover. Obviously, if Indiana wins, it changes the whole narrative of the college football playoff, right? To get a win on the road against Ohio State, you would have to take them serious as a playoff contender. But I like Ohio State here. Justin Fields is playing incredible. He's the most efficient quarterback in the country. He doesn't make bad. It doesn't seem like he even comes close to making a bad decision. He's got so many weapons around him, and then maybe the defense isn't as good this year as it was last year, but there's still plenty of NFL firepower on that side of the ball, and it's developing. That's a side of the ball where Ohio State's truly developing, and so I expect them to be playing better here in November as we start getting into where you're trying to peak as a program. I like Ohio State in this game. I don't think the game will ever be in doubt, but Indiana's played Ohio State tough. Y'all remember Ezekiel Elliott basically had to carry Ohio State to a win at Memorial Stadium in Bloomington a few years ago. So Indiana's been in games with Ohio State before. Some of the more talented Ohio State teams that we've seen, Indiana's played well against them. And so, we'll see what they have this weekend.
You cannot get better insight than that from an Indiana native. We appreciate Steve stopping by. Have a good one, Bucknutters.
Take care, y'all. See you on the front row.